CNN, mostly bull. That's what their own people say. That's what reporters inside the organization say. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott. This is your right angle on the latest from that paragon of integrity and news, honest reporting, CNN. Turns out that our friend James O'Keefe and his Project Veritas got some secret cameras into CNN and took some pictures and talked to some of the producers at CNN. These aren't just people in the mailroom. These are the actual producers. And he got one of them to say a few interesting things, and here are a few of the quotes. This is from John Bonfield, the CNN producer. He says that the Russia narrative is mostly bull right now. He says that CNN ratings are incredible right now because President Trump is good for business, and so on and so on. He says that the CNN chief, after criticizing Trump for a day or two out of getting out of the climate accords, says, "Great job, guys. Now let's get back to Russia." But as he said, the whole story with Russia is pretty much bull. We don't have anything. We don't have any real proof. These are direct quotes from him. But of all the quotes from this guy, this is the one I think is the most important. So this is what a producer at CNN actually said on camera when he didn't know he was being recorded. It's a business. People are like, the media has an ethical... All the nice, cutesy little ethics that used to get talked about in journalism school, you're just like, that's adorable. That's adorable. This is business. Yeah, all those cutesy little ethics, that they used to talk about in journalism school. Scott, you learned a few of those cutesy little ethics when you were in journalism school. They used to guide this profession that was at one point respected. What do you have to say about all of this?
Well, it was good while it lasted. I mean, everybody knows that the news business is a business. I mean, who founded CNN? It was Ted Turner. He's a billionaire, and this is what he does. It was an investment for him. Yes, he's a bleeding heart liberal progressive guy, but what he really wanted to do was create a viable business, and he saw an opportunity there to parlay a UHF station in Atlanta into something that became, sort of America's team for news, as he used to misname the Atlanta Braves America's team. I don't know if that part is as shocking as it ought to be. What I think is shocking is something I really haven't seen paid attention to all that much, and you alluded to right here. So President Trump pulls out of the Paris Climate Accords, okay? And they give it a couple of days play, and then the CEO at CNN says, okay, enough of that. Let's get back to the Trump-Russia connection. Let me ask you, what is CNN? It's a 24-hour news channel, right? 24 hours a day of content that they must fill up. They've got only time for how many stories now? Like, we can't keep doing anything about the Paris Climate Accord. All the billions of dollars that we're spending have to be devoted to a single story. We're going to blow off two major stories in the world. They can't keep two stories going at the same time. I think it just turns the whole news organization into a caricature of itself. I would encourage you to go back and watch the great movie Broadcast News to see this sort of behind-the-scenes chicanery that goes on where, William Hurt's character musters a tear because they didn't catch it on camera the first time. This is the kind of thing that's happening all the time in this sausage factory that is not only CNN, but MSNBC and many others. And I think the more that we know about this stuff, and hats off to James O'Keefe and Project Veritas for revealing this kind of stuff, the more we realize how not newsworthy much of the news is, I think the better off we are. It makes us more discerning consumers of the news.
Okay, fair enough about the business part, Steve. But basically, when somebody tells you that they're a news source, essentially what they're selling is not even just information, they're selling credibility. Yeah. So it's one thing to understand that a person or a story is driving ratings, especially when these businesses are going out of business, and I can understand that. But when you understand that the story that you're working on in order to drive ratings is in fact mostly bullshit, and if it turns out that you think the whole idea of ethics in journalism is just adorable, you have crossed the line somewhere, haven't you? You're no longer going after stories that are interesting to people. You are now creating stories to drive a narrative that doesn't exist in order to make money.
Yeah, when you say that, you're selling integrity. You know what you're selling? You know what you are when you do that, and then you don't deliver. You're a con man. The con in con man is short for confidence. You are selling somebody your confidence that you believe in this thing that is actually a fraud. It's a way of scamming money out of people who trust you because of the confidence that you sold them on. It's there's a reason why it's illegal, why it's a crime, why people go to jail. And CNN's had a very bad weekend. Friday they had to announce that they essentially fired 3 of their reporters because they let slip through one of these Russia stories that was based on one anonymous source. And I want to know who this anonymous source is, because it used to be that if a source burned you, if they lied to you and you went to the people with your confidence in your source, that you would then reveal your source. You would say, that guy is the liar. That guy made me look bad, and now I'm going to tell you who this is. I want to know, who was this anonymous source that CNN based their story on, the one that cost 3 reporters their jobs? I want to know.
It was Jeff Zucker.
Jeff Zucker's just making things up. If you don't know, he's the guy who runs CNN. So yeah, it's not the news. It's a con game. It's a circus. What I'd like to see, CNN has one of the great corporate logos of all time. They've got the CNN all one thing, and they've got James Earl Jones doing that famous voiceover. This is CNN. What I'd like to see him do, to sell us on something more than just a con game. So I'd like to hear that famous James Earl Jones voiceover. This is CNN. But instead of seeing the 35-year-old CNN logo, what I'd like to see is a cage full of hyperactive spider monkeys flinging poo at one another.
Steve, you're suggesting that they're off by 1 letter. It should be, this is CON.
There you go. Brilliant, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, that's brilliant. All right. What do you say about this? These people are supposedly the guardians of our democracy. They're the ones who are supposed to be looking for corruption of any kind and furrowing it out. And the only distinction that journalists are supposed to make is the one in that great sentence, which is, our job is to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable, regardless of what party they're in. So all of this is just more of the death knell of this organization. And I just think that it is really reaching a critical mass now, where he said one of the quotes that Zucker said concerning the retraction story says CNN is trusted more now than we've ever been ever, which is more fake news. It's just not true, right? It's just not true. So it's a habit they're in they can't get out of. The whole progressive situation is all linked together, and this is one of the key chains in the progressive structure, is giving people one side of the story and making it sound very sympathetic or very evil, depending on how you want to spin it. And it's slowly falling apart. And thank God. And it's falling apart because of the internet. If there was no internet, we wouldn't catch these things. If there was no internet, they wouldn't be held accountable. If there was no internet, these elitists in their silk robes would be able to open the doors of our civilization to the barbarians the way they have every single time in human history before. And this one time, perhaps, the ability of common people to talk to each other may stop these swine before they get to pull it off. And if they do, it's going to be because of people like our members at BillWhittle.com who make this show possible. Right. Just regular citizen producers. They're just regular folks who pony up to keep this news coming out. And if you've been enjoying the show and not being a part of it, we'd love to have you become a member over at BillWhittle.com. This is the future and not CNN. Kind of shocking and awful in a way, I know, but nevertheless, as unimpressive as that may be, from the 89th story of the Bill Whittle Enterprises structure here in Los Angeles, California, I'm Bill Whittle. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
CNN more trusted than ever, damning himself with faint praise.